If you're familiar with Iraq's history, you'll know that on the 16th of July 1979, Saddam Hussein performs a coup d'etat and removes Hassan al-Banna from power, and he becomes the president of Iraq. But you have to know, before Hassan al-Banna was removed from office, Saddam Hussein was pretty much the most powerful man in Iraq already, and he was the one calling the shots everywhere, so it wasn't like it was gonna be any different. Anyways, Saddam becomes the president of Iraq, and one of his first missions was to eliminate all the traitors in the Ba'ath Party. And by traitors, we mean the people that didn't want Saddam to be president. On the 22nd of July, meaning 6 days after Saddam is officially sworn in as the president, he tells all the party members, for an important meeting, let's meet on this day in the Al-Hult Hall in Baghdad. Of course, as you know, when Saddam was trying to take power, there were a lot of party members that were against it. Some of them were straightforward with Saddam and didn't want him in office, and some others were secretive, and they were trying to overthrow him before he could gain power. And that's why it was important for Saddam to have every party member, good and bad, in that hall where he was gonna speak. So everybody's gathered in the hall and Saddam comes moving in. Even though he has only been a president for less than a week, but the entire country is in his hands. And everybody knows that, especially the people in the room. When Saddam goes to the podium, he doesn't speak right away, and people are getting nervous and sweating heavily. And it doesn't help that it's 40 degrees outside, and the air conditioning does not work in the hall. We're not actually sure if it didn't work or it was purposefully kept off to make the people more tense and nervous. And it makes sense that Saddam ordered the AC to be off because he's the president, and they're not gonna bring him in a hall where the AC doesn't work in the middle of the summer. So this was another method to make all his opponents more nervous. But anyways, while these guys are sweating, Saddam is not speaking. He's just moving his papers around and causing the situation to get even more tense. And when he acts like he's about to speak into the microphone, he goes back to playing with his papers. The entire hall, where there are hundreds of people sitting, is super quiet, and the only thing you're hearing is Saddam's papers being moved around. An important fact that you should know is that before Saddam came to this hall, he had one of his guys, or should I say one of his right-hand mans, to speak with this hall. But this speech was never recorded, so we're not sure exactly what was said. But basically what was said is this. There has been a conspiracy found against the country of Iraq and our president Saddam Hussein. Some higher-ups in the Ba'ath Party are conspiring against our country and our president, and their goal is to overthrow him. After saying this, the man speaking takes a few second pause and says, the conspirators are in the hall right now, and he leaves the podium. A few minutes of complete silence continues, where Saddam starts to walk into the hall, and this was one of the main reasons why the people were already super nervous. Eventually, after Saddam plays with his papers, he starts to speak. The first thing he says, he calls Mohi Abdul Hossein Mashhadi to the mic. Mashhadi was a powerful man in the Ba'ath Party, and he knows only a few days ago, he has publicly announced that we should not allow Saddam Hussein to be the president of Iraq. After Saddam calls Mashhadi to the mic, he sits to the table next to him where there's different microphones as well. And Mashhadi goes behind the podium and starts to speak. Mashhadi goes straight into confessing. He said me and other party members were trying to overthrow Saddam Hussein. And while he's confessing to the entire room, Saddam is sitting down and he starts to light a Cuban cigar. While all this is happening, Mashhadi is going on about the confession. He says, I was the one behind the conspiracies. I was the one to get other party members to go against the president. I was the one that worked against our beautiful country. And we have to say that all these were a lie, because before he came up to the stand to speak, he was brutally tortured. And they basically told him what to do, what to say when he goes up on the stand. or we will do the same things to your wife and kids. And this is why Mashhadi is pretty much forced into saying all this, even though it was all not true. He was one of the party members that publicly went against Saddam, but he was making it look like he was a conspirator. So he knew if he doesn't do this, his family would be killed. That's why he said exactly what he was told. Anyways, he continues his few-minute speech and he goes back to his chair and sits down. After Mashhadi leaves, Saddam slowly gets up from his chair, walks slowly to the podium, and once he's behind the microphone, he doesn't start speaking right away again. He starts to light his cigar. Saddam wanted to show his opponents that he's not in a hurry because he has all the people that went against him inside the room and there's no way for them to run. After taking a hit from his cigar, he finally begins to speak and says, "What should we do to these traitors?" Everybody knows the answer. There is no other answer than the sword. If you could check the chairs in this hall, it would be all wet. Some because of sweat, and some because of other substances. After Saddam says there's no other way than the sword, everybody started clapping. After the applause stops, Saddam says, "If I call your name, get up, say the party slogan, and walk out." One by one, he calls different names. They get up, say the party slogan, and walk out the hall. Nobody told these guys what was waiting for them on the other side of the door, but they had an idea. Everybody followed Saddam's orders and said the thing and went out. But one guy would not say the slogan. He complained and said, "Me? What did I do?" And Saddam didn't even care. He angrily repeated and said, "If I call your name, say the party slogan and walk out." And this man didn't say anything and walked out. One by one, 68 names were called, and everybody left after saying the slogan. And after calling all these, Saddam turns to the people and says, "Thank you for your loyalty." And everybody begins crying tears of joy and clapping. Some were clapping so hard like their country won the World Cup. Even Saddam shed a tear. We're not sure if this was tears of joy, or tears of sadness, or tears of he won finally. We're not truly sure. What do you guys think? But let's see what happened to the 68 men that were walked out of the hall. Anybody that was taken out of the hall was arrested and put into a military vehicle, and they were taken straight to jail. The day after the arrests happened, it was their court date. After a few hours, 22 of the 68 men were sentenced to death. But Saddam said to kill these 22 men, we're not gonna need an executioner. The executioners were going to be chosen by Saddam himself. And it was the men that didn't get this death sentence. So basically they were told to kill the traitor that was sentenced to death if you want to live. The 22 men that were sentenced went into the yard behind the courtroom, and 22 other men was chosen as the executioner for these men. And one by one, they were handed a handgun and told to shoot the guy on the other side. The people that were told to execute their party members never killed anybody. That's why they couldn't do it. Their hands would shake so bad that they would miss few shots until they would finally hit the target. Saddam also told the regular people of Baghdad that there are traitors being executed in this yard behind this wall. And while all these executions are happening, there are Iraqi people cheering for their new president on how he's killing the traitors and the people that are anti-Iraq. The purge that Saddam performed in front of all his party members had a few goals. He wanted to tell everybody in politics who's boss, and if you're disloyal, what would happen. And another thing, he pretty much showed the people, if you go against the government, this could happen to you as well. After this purge was performed, Iraq entered a silent era. Nobody dared to go against Saddam's word.